Adolfo was out on his own path when he came across something completely unexpected, a lion cub standing alone on the side of the road. As someone who'd spent years working with big cats, he didn't hesitate to get a closer look. What happened next was something he never could have seen coming. He hadn't set out with a plan that day, just letting his feet guide him, unaware that they were leading him straight to what would become the biggest turning point of his life. He was walking a quiet, twisting road when he noticed a quick movement just off to the side. There, standing still and wide-eyed, was a small lion cub. The moment stopped him cold. A young lion, completely alone and clearly scared, just sitting there in the open. It was something you just don't see, and it pulled at something deep inside him. The cub looked hungry and exhausted, like it had been through more than it could handle. Adolfo didn't waste time. Even with all his experience, he knew to approach with care. These animals are wild, no matter how small. But as he stepped in closer, he could see it in the cub's eyes. This little one was afraid, unsure, and needing help. Then came the part that caught him off guard. The cub let out the faintest whimper, barely a sound, but enough to break his heart. That tiny cry flipped a switch inside him. He wasn't just out on patrol anymore. He couldn't walk away. But first, he had to be sure it was safe to step in. He stopped a few feet from her, scanning the area. Any lion parent could be watching from the brush, ready to defend their baby. But the place was silent, and the cub didn't look like she'd been with her family for a while. No fresh paw prints, no movement in the distance. The little lion had clearly been left behind. Something in Adolfo clicked. Maybe it was instinct, maybe experience, or maybe just a mix of both. But he knew what he had to do. He moved slowly, calmly, speaking in the soft, steady voice animals seem to trust. He crouched down, keeping his movements light and gentle. The cub watched him, alert but not backing away. When he reached out a hand, she didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into it like she could already tell she was safe. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She was so light, and as he held her close, she let out a few unsure purrs, tiny soft sounds that seemed to say, "Thank you." That's when he realized she was a she. And oddly enough, she felt more like a sleepy house cat than a fierce wild animal. Right then, Adolfo made a choice that would change both their lives. He decided to call her Kiara, like the little lion in those Lion King movies. And he promised himself he'd do whatever it took to keep her safe. As he walked toward the wildlife sanctuary, Kiara curled up against his chest, and the doubts crept in. Was this the right call? Could he really raise a lion? But looking down at her tiny, trusting face, he figured he'd just have to try. The moment Adolfo stepped into the sanctuary with Kiara tucked gently in his arms, the staff froze. Everyone stared in disbelief. Whispers swept through the group, and a few gasps broke the silence. Nobody could quite wrap their heads around how calm and steady Adolfo was, with a wild lion cub cradled against his chest. Even as a baby, a lion was still one of the wild's top predators. Everyone knew that. The staff stayed on edge for days. What if the cub got scared and bit him? What if her instincts kicked in? Their worries made sense. After all, wild animals are unpredictable, especially in unfamiliar surroundings. But Adolfo wasn't just any trainer. His coworkers had nicknamed him King of the Jungle for a reason. Years of working with big cats had taught him to read every little signal, every twitch, every tail flick. He knew when a wild cat was calm, when it was agitated, and when to back off. With quiet confidence, he walked over to an open enclosure and sat down inside with Kiara by his side. He didn't rush anything. He wanted her to get used to the space, to know she was safe there. So he stayed with her, day after day, helping her feel at home. But then something shifted. Just a few days later, Kiara started to slow down. She didn't have the same energy. Her eyes looked tired, and she moved less and less. Adolfo's heart sank. The sanctuary, which had felt like a fresh start, suddenly felt more like a hospital. He stopped sleeping much. Instead, he sat by her side through the nights, keeping watch. The playful spark in her was gone, replaced by stillness. and that stillness scared him more than anything. He had seen sickness before, but seeing it in Kiara, after all they'd already been through, hit different. Relying on everything he'd learned over the years, he kept close tabs on her symptoms. He gave her the meds she needed, checked her breathing, and adjusted her space to make her as comfortable as possible. Through all that, something started to shift between them. Their bond grew stronger. The healing wasn't fast. It came in little moments. The first time she lifted her head. The first time her tail gave a slow, curious flick. Then one day she stood up and even tried to play. Every tiny step forward lit up Adolfo's face with relief and quiet pride. The sanctuary team, who'd once looked on with doubt and caution, now saw something else. A man fully committed to a little lion's fight for life. The once nervous whispers faded into quiet respect. Adolfo wasn't just a trainer anymore. He was her protector. Days turned into weeks. Weeks became months. And through it all, Kiara grew stronger. Her roars returned, louder, bolder, full of life. Adolfo stayed right beside her, steady as ever, helping her rise from that dark chapter. And over the next few years, his care for Kiara was nothing short of remarkable. Adolfo made sure Kiara was eating well, slowly introducing her to the kinds of food she'd find in the wild. He always knew their time together wouldn't last forever, so he started preparing her for life without him from early on. Teaching her how to hunt and eat like a wild lioness became a big part of their routine. He wanted her to be strong, smart, and ready for anything. As she got older, Kiara's energy skyrocketed. Adolfo adjusted their schedule to keep her active, building her strength day by day. They played every day, running, jumping, and tackling games that kept her muscles strong and her instincts sharp. She wasn't just growing in size, though. She was growing on everyone at the sanctuary, too. The little cub who once whimpered in his arms had turned into a powerful, graceful lioness. Her moments with Adolfo, those playful lunges, the quiet rests, even the way she looked at him, drew in anyone nearby. Staff would pause just to watch the two of them together. The bond between them felt almost magical. Still, not everyone felt at ease. Some of the staff couldn't shake off a nervous feeling. It wasn't Kiara herself. She was always calm around Adolfo. But the worry came from knowing how unpredictable wild animals could be. No matter how well trained, no matter how loving, she was still a lion. Adolfo's ease with her was impressive. He could tell her mood by a single flick of her ear or a shift in her posture. He could even lift her into his arms on occasion, which made some staff uneasy. Their worries weren't loud, but they lingered in the background. The deeper concern wasn't just about now. It was about what might come later. What if one day Kiara's wild instincts took over? What if she stopped responding the way she always had? The staff cared deeply, for Adolfo and for Kiara, and they started asking questions they couldn't easily answer. At the same time, some wondered about Kiara's future. Could she survive on her own after all these years with so much love and care? Adolfo was starting to think the same thing. Kiara had outgrown the sanctuary in more ways than one. She needed more space, more challenge, more of the wild. It wasn't easy, but Adolfo knew what he had to do. His love for Kiara wasn't about keeping her close. It was about doing what was best for her. So he reached out to the Black Jaguar White Tiger Foundation in Mexico City, a group known for helping big cats live full natural lives. They were happy to help. Not only would Kiara be closer to where she came from, but the foundation had the space, resources, and experience to care for a full-grown lioness. So Adolfo packed up their things and got ready to bring her there himself. He wanted to hand her over in person, not just to say goodbye, but to make sure the people taking her in truly understood her. He told them everything, her habits, her signals, her gentle nature. He wanted them to know who she really was. What he didn't know was that they already knew about him. His reputation as a big cat expert had reached them long before he arrived. Even after arriving in Mexico City, the team at the foundation was eager to learn from Adolfo. They hung on to every word, soaking in all the details he shared about Kiara, what she liked, how she communicated, and the small quirks that made her who she was. Adolfo felt reassured. It was clear they truly cared and knew what they were doing. Still, handing her over wasn't easy. He knew Chiara didn't understand why she had been brought to a new place or why her best friend wouldn't be staying. That part broke his heart a little, so he stayed an extra day just to help her adjust. He brought all of her things, her toys, her blankets, anything that smelled like comfort. He watched as Chiara slowly explored the new enclosure, sniffing around with cautious curiosity. She was brave, but he could tell she was looking for reassurance, and he was there to give it. When it came time to leave, Adolfo made one last stop by her enclosure. There she was, running, playing, already mingling with other big cats. She looked happy, free. That sight gave him a little peace, even as tears filled his eyes. With a heavy heart, he turned and walked away. He knew in his gut that he'd made the right choice, but the pain of saying goodbye stayed with him. The journey home was quiet. His truck felt emptier than ever. Without Chiara beside him, everything seemed just a bit off. Back at the wildlife sanctuary, her presence still echoed in small ways. Adolfo kept going with his work, but there was an emptiness in the routine. Feeding the animals, checking the enclosures, everything reminded him of her. But he found comfort in knowing she was safe. The foundation kept him updated with messages and photos. He watched videos of her lying in the sun, pouncing playfully and nuzzling her new companions. She looked strong. She looked at peace. Though they were miles apart, the bond between them never faded. He still felt connected to her through those updates. Adolfo threw himself into his work again, taking care of the other animals, helping new rescues settle in. But every now and then, a quiet sadness would surface. He missed her. He wondered how she'd changed, how big she'd grown. Eventually, the feeling grew too strong to ignore. He reached out to the foundation, asking for more photos, maybe even a video. The staff responded warmly, fully understanding what Chiara meant to him. They sent him a video clip of her chasing butterflies, her mane fluttering in the breeze, her powerful stride full of life. And a photo, one that showed her looking straight at the camera, eyes bright, tail curled playfully. Then came the message that made his heart skip, an invitation to come visit. The team told him he was always welcome, and they'd love for him to spend a few days with Chiara again. Flooded with both nerves and excitement, Adolfo didn't hesitate. He said yes right away. The very next day, Adolfo boarded a plane headed back to Mexico City, a small new toy tucked into his bag, a gift for the old friend he hadn't seen in 7 long years. So much time had passed since he'd last laid eyes on the lioness he had once rescued and raised like family. Deep down, he knew there was a chance she might not remember him. That thought stung more than he wanted to admit. But even if she didn't recognize him, he needed to see her, to know she was truly thriving. As the plane landed, a wave of emotions hit him all at once. Hope, nerves, a little fear. What if the reunion didn't go the way he imagined? What if she didn't come close? Still, he reminded himself that just seeing her healthy and happy would be enough. That would mean he'd done right by her. At the foundation, he tried to steady himself as he walked through the familiar gates. The team greeted him warmly, but there was an undercurrent of seriousness. They reminded him that this was a wild lioness now, not the playful cub he'd once cradled in his arms. Anything could happen. But Adolfo wasn't afraid. He had spent years with Chiara, and his heart told him this moment needed to happen. He entered the large enclosure where Chiara now lived, and it felt like even the air had changed. Something in the space crackled with tension and excitement. Adolfo took a slow, steady step forward, his eyes locked on the lioness lounging in the distance. She noticed him almost immediately. Chiara rose, staring hard in his direction. Then she began to pace, her heavy paws pressing into the ground, her body giving off a low series of deep, throaty calls. Everyone around the enclosure went still. The staff watched closely, some with nervous expressions, unsure of what was about to happen. Adolfo stood his ground, He gently called her name, his voice steady but emotional. Kiara. The moment the name reached her ears, she stopped cold. And then, in a flash, she ran. Not a cautious trot, she charged straight toward him, dust kicking up behind her massive paws. The Foundation staff braced themselves, unsure of what would happen when hundreds of pounds of raw muscle met the man standing so calmly in her path. But what happened next silenced everyone. Kiara didn't pounce in aggression. She wrapped him in a hug. Her giant paws, once so small they could fit in the palm of his hand, now pressed gently against his back as she leaned into him with powerful but controlled force. It wasn't fear. It wasn't instinct. It was recognition. It was love. The staff could hardly believe their eyes. In that moment, the bond between the lioness and her old friend said more than words ever could. The Foundation staff stood in stunned silence as the incredible moment played out before their eyes. What they were seeing wasn't aggression. It was joy. Pure, overwhelming joy. It was like Kiara had just been reunited with someone she never forgot, someone who had once meant everything to her. That embrace between a massive lioness and the man who had raised her brought back the early memories, when she was just a frightened cub, and Adolfo was the only comfort she knew. The years that had passed seemed to melt away in an instant. The staff, deeply moved, quietly stepped back to let them share that moment. No one wanted to interrupt. Adolfo showed no fear, only calm, love, and quiet pride. What they were witnessing was something rare, a connection that went beyond species, beyond time. Kiara, now strong, regal, and fully grown, clearly hadn't forgotten. Her happiness was unmistakable, and the gentle way she nuzzled into Adolfo said everything her voice couldn't. Thankfully, the beautiful moment was captured on camera. The Foundation shared the footage online, and it quickly touched hearts around the world. People watched with tears in their eyes as the lioness welcomed back her first family. Kiara's reaction reminded us all of something powerful. The love between a human and an animal isn't easily broken. The video wasn't just a feel-good clip, it was proof that real bonds can survive years of distance. The way Kiara ran to Adolfo, the way she wrapped her paws around him, it all hit home for millions. This wasn't just about a lion and her trainer. It was about loyalty, memory, and the impact we leave on those we care for. Adolfo's journey with Kiara inspired people everywhere. His quiet dedication, even long after they'd been apart, showed what real care looks like. And thanks to the Black Jaguar White Tiger Foundation, their story became a light for others who work with rescued wildlife. The Foundation's mission and Adolfo's part in it highlighted how important it is to protect and understand animals, not just as creatures of the wild, but as individuals with deep emotional lives. Their story encouraged others to look at conservation with more heart. During his stay, Adolfo didn't just visit Kiara. He spent time with the team, shared his knowledge, and helped them fine-tune their work with big cats. His years of experience added something special to the Foundation's ongoing mission. When it was time to leave, Kiara's roars followed him. They echoed through the enclosure, not of sadness, but of connection. Adolfo walked away knowing that she was thriving, that she remembered, that she was loved, and she was home. What an incredible story this has been. Did you think Kiara would recognize Adolfo after all these years? How would you have felt watching a lion charge at someone, only to embrace them like an old friend? Let us know in the comments. And if this story touched your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and share, so more people can see the beauty of Kiara's journey. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next amazing adventure.